Good morning, everybody. It's good to see some of y'all in person anyway. I apologize for the hassle in getting into this facility. We were scheduled to have this in the highway building, the boardroom, but there's some IT work going on in our boardroom, and the table, which is about this size, has got all sorts of tables and computers and TV screens and stuff laying on it, so that wouldn't work. We just didn't realize the research that was going on out here. So, and of course, we got a construction project too, which adds to it. But for those of you that got here, thank you for coming. I really appreciate y'all being here. We may have a few stragglers coming in. I think we're trying to figure out how to get in, where to go and all. But for those online, if you're on your phone in the car riding around West Raleigh, use the Powell Drive entrance to Barrel Road, and you can get here. So if you're online listening, but we'll welcome everybody. I'm Joey Hopkins, Secretary of NCDOT. We're going to start with introductions, and we'll start in the room, but then we will go online too to get folks online. And my goal is, just so everybody, for me, I would like to start having this meeting in person. I know this group met in person before COVID, got away from that for very good reasons during COVID. We just hadn't transitioned back. This is kind of a transition type meeting, I'll call it. But my goal for our next meeting is to meet in person. We should be back in the highway building, and everything should be back finished and all the construction done in that facility. So again, thank y'all for being here, and Brian, we'll start with you with introductions.
Good morning. I'm Brian Mayhew, State Traffic Engineer with NCDOT.
Morning, Brian Murphy, NCDOT Traffic Safety.
Morning, Daniel Carter, also in Traffic Safety.
Morning, Ali Muhammad, Atri.
I'm Ann Dickerson, East Carolina University.
Matt Howard, Web Patrol.
Kendall Jackson, I'm with the commercial section. I have our waste stations side of it.
Brady Johnson, for Colorado Patrol.
Sean Troy, State Traffic Safety Engineer for NCDOT.
I'm Mark Ezel, I'm the Director of the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
I'm Mike Avery, representing the Conference of District Attorneys. Bill McKeel with the New York County Conservation Network.
Christopher Oliver, Traffic Safety.
And we'll start online, but I'm gonna let Chris call y'all out, so we got some sort of order to it. I can't see the screen from where I'm sitting at.
Ryan Brumfield.
Morning, Ryan Brumfield, NCDOT Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Bill Clark.
Jennifer, you there?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't hear my name. My name's Jennifer. I'm with Governor's Highway Safety Program as a grant specialist.
Mark Hensley.
I'm Mark Hensley with AARP North Carolina.
Hilda Brandt.
This is Heather Hildebrand, statewide initiatives under strategic initiatives.
Lisa Keith.
Hi there, Elise Keefe, UNC Injury Prevention Research Center, and work on NC Vision Zero.
McCormick.
Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration Division Administrator.
Lydia McIntyre.
Yes, Lydia McIntyre, City of Greensboro and the Greensboro NPO. Thank you.
Michael Messer.
Hey, good morning, Todd Messer, North Carolina Office of Emergency Medical Services.
Sanders.
This is Laura Sant, co-director of UNC Highway Safety Research Center.
Terry
Lansdale, Blackwalk, North Carolina.
Ms. Robbins.
Good morning, Tom Robbins, founder and president of the National Teen Driver Works on Safe and Move Over Safe program, Works on Safe.
Victor Barr.
Victor Barber, the Carolinas Associated General Contractor.
Good morning, all. Did that get everybody? Good morning. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for joining us online too. We'll get right into it. Brian Murphy's here to give us an update on the fatal and serious injury trend.
I'll kind of quickly go through those trends. They're similar to kind of what we've seen here before. Chris, just a second to get those pulled up.
We have them on this one screen.
Oh,
Yeah. Takes a little bit. Y'all see them online? Somebody acknowledge?
Sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Joy, this is Yolanda. George, we are having a hard time getting it. We do see it online. We're doing it from our phone now because we can't get up to the building.
So Yolanda, you may not have been online yet. And I apologize for the directions getting in here. It's a lot of construction going on. But if you go to Powell Road, which runs between Hillsborough and, is that still Western? Hillsborough and Western, and take the Barrel Drive connection off of Powell Road near the railroad crossing. You can get in here that way. And I apologize for, again, apologize.
To get in the back gate and they're paving here.
So you gotta go around the Powell Drive and come in the front entrance. Because of the paving.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. But we do see, I do see this, I'm able to see the presentation, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Y'all be careful. We'll see you in person in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
And Chris, you can get to the next slide. This has got the hardest job today.
I can get up and help you, but I don't think I can do that.
You can see that mouse on big.
There we go. Okay. All right. So that's good.
All right, so we'll start out with fatality trends. Again, if you're new to these meetings, this might be a little bit new information. If not, you've seen this probably many times, but just a couple things to point out here. Obviously, since about 2011, we've kind of been on an increasing trend with fatalities in our state. And then certainly during those pandemic years, saw things kind of shoot out of sight there for a bit. Probably the new thing here on the slide is the 2023 numbers. I think when we showed those back in February, they were still very much preliminary. They kind of settled out at this point. So did see a decrease in 2023 compared to 2021 and 2022. Still not where we were even kind of pre-pandemic. So certainly a lot of work still to do here. Next slide. And if we look at kind of where those fatalities or how they're trending year to date. So this is January through April of 2024 compared to January through April of 2023. Pretty similar. Again, we ran these numbers in early May. So certainly the April data is not complete. And so about 5% lower when we ran these numbers for 2024 numbers. But again, considering that lag, I'd say we're trending very similar to kind of how we were last year. You will notice kind of a pretty significant decrease there in the impaired drivers. I would just use caution. It does take some time, certainly, for that testing to come back for the fatalities. So wouldn't get excited about that because that's even more of a lag maybe than some of the other metrics there. But generally tracking very similar. I guess the one increase there you see for pedestrians, about a 15% increase compared to the same period last year. But those other metrics are kind of tracking very similar. Next slide. Then if we look at these for serious injuries, again, similar trends. So again, if you're not familiar with this data, there was a definition change in what officers used to identify serious injuries in 2016. So you kind of see that artificial jump there as that definition kind of reset. But increasing trends here as well through the pandemic and even afterwards. So comparing 2023 numbers to 2022, these serious injuries did go up, whereas fatalities went down a bit. So we did see that increase there. Next slide. And kind of looking at how these break out in those emphasis areas as well, you kind of see the change here. So trending a little bit lower here in 2024 compared to how we were for that same period in 2023. Again, still early data, so don't read too much into that. I think the general message here is that things are trending very similar to how they were in 2023, comparing these first 4 months of 2020. So one of the questions we did get last time was about the bicycle crash trends. So I did want to kind of show a little bit more in-depth information in those particular areas. And so if we start just by looking at the total number of reported bicycle crashes by year, so this is for the last 10 years, you can see they're pretty steady. So 10 years ago, we were at about 870 bicycle crashes. Last year, we were at 860, so somewhere in that ballpark. So these tend to have trended fairly flat over the last 10 years or so. And so to put that into perspective, so 855 bicycle-related crashes, we have over 300,000 reported crashes on our public roadways. So relatively small numbers here, but obviously they make up a bigger proportion of the severe injury crashes just because of the vulnerable nature of bicyclists. Next slide. And so if we look at those fatal bicycle crash trends for the last 10 years, you see the kind of the big jump there, obviously in 2023. Again, these are smaller numbers, so you do see more variance year to year. And so, you know, we're probably averaging maybe 25 per year if we look at the last 10 years, but certainly did see a pretty significant increase there in 2023. Next slide. And so digging into that a little bit deeper and look at these a few different ways. So if we look at this by rural versus urban, typically we have more of these on our rural environment, our rural parts of our state. If we're looking at this by year. Last year, it was a little bit different in that we had about the same number in the rural areas as we did in urban. So pretty even split there when looking at it from that perspective. Next slide. And if you look at these by month, we typically see a little bit of a boost there around the fall, so October timeframe. And we saw that in 2023 as well. So the light blue area is kind of an average for the last 9 years. And then the green there is the 2023 numbers. So we're trending pretty closely there for 2023 compared to average until we got towards the fall. And then that pretty significant increase. Again, the numbers are small, so they do look a little bit more exaggerated when we look at them this way. But we know fall is can be a more popular time for biking. The weather is probably a little bit more amenable to that. It's hard for us to know exactly the use of bicyclists or kind of the nature of their trip. We just have access to what we have in the crash report form. So, it's hard to know, is it commuting? Is it recreation? Is it, these types of things are hard for us to get at. We can certainly make assumptions, but they are assumptions. Next slide. And then lastly, just kind of looking at this by lighting conditions. So the rural crashes here are shown on the left. And so about 2/3 of those are in daylight condition, the rest obviously at night, and being in a rural area, we don't have a lot of lighting in our rural areas, so most of those in the dark roadway, not lighted category. If you look at these in urban areas, so about 3/4 of these in daylight, and then about 15% in dark conditions, but a lighted roadway, and the rest obviously dark night. So we looked at these a number of different ways. We looked at kind of where these crashes were, if there's any clusters location-wise throughout the states. We plotted these and kind of looked at them that way as well. There's not a lot of patterns from that perspective. I think the Asheville area had maybe 4 of these events last year, but that was kind of the closest thing to a cluster, but not a lot of pattern. You look at it that way. I think that's the last slide here. Happy to take any questions you might have on the statewide trends or anything bicycle specific.
So anybody online, if you've got a question or a comment for Brian, if you don't mind, just raise your hand, but we'll start in the room if anybody's got anything for Brian. Anybody here? How about online, Chris? Anybody, anybody raise their hand online?
That's eating. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Brian. Appreciate that information. Good information. And overall, at least the trend so far, and it is early data. Don't forget that. But we're trending a little bit better, it seems like overall. And it is interesting, I think, to look at those impaired crashes. And again, that's still early data, so there'll be more data that'll get cleaned up as the year goes on. So now we'll move to Sean Floyd, who's going to talk about 2025 preliminary safety performance measures. Sean?
All right, thank you. Go ahead. So typically about this time every year, we have this discussion on our safety performance measures. With rulemaking that was enacted back in 2016, we basically have put a process in place to have performance measures reporting out to Federal Highway. Those are by number of fatalities, rate of fatalities, number of serious injuries, rate of serious injuries, number of non-motorized fatalities. And we set up targets that are based on a rolling 5 years. Our targets are for calendar years. And we're basically assessed each year of whether we meet or we've made significant progress. We've got to, achieve 4 out of 5 of those targets, either being met or either being better than the average years. So kind of the way our targets are set, if you guys recall from our last executive committee meeting, we voted on continuing to utilize the goal that we set in 2019, and that is to reduce our fatalities and serious injuries by half by 2035 and towards 0 by 2050. So that goal is still what we're moving forward with. I wanted to throw this graph up because it really gives perspective of what we set in 2019 and what we continue to want to achieve with our 2024 plan. In 2018, we had 6,056 fatalities and serious injuries. That set us in line for a goal of 3,028 fatalities and serious injuries by 2035. We've decided to stick with that. The tough thing about it is, over the last 5 years, we've had an increase in our fatal and serious injuries. So we've got to essentially do a 58% reduction instead of a 50% reduction by 2035 to make any progress. I wanted to show this graphic because when we think about our aspirational goal that we've set, we are almost always, until we get below the numbers, going to fail our performance measures. Right? Next slide. Yeah, so this was the target assessment that was just received by us about a month ago. Of course, as stated, we did not achieve our targets. We were not better than our baseline, but we're still going to move forward with that aspirational goal of trying to get to half by 2035. Next slide. And so, based on that line, we know what our performance measures are going to be for the calendar year of 2025. You can see all the way to the right, our goal for fatalities is going to be 1,103. Our goal for serious injuries is going to be 3,204. We're still working through the rates. We're waiting to get VMT data from 2023 and our forest data from 2023 to finalize these goals. But that's kind of what it's going to look like, what we're trying to move forward with over this next year and how we're going to get assessed in 2020. Next slide. So I do want to take a few minutes to add on to this presentation and talk to you guys about our 2024 strategic highway safety plan. You guys have saw a presentation on what we're working on over this last year. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at the final drafts. We'll have those documents finalized over the next couple of weeks. It will be in 3 parts. It'll have the plan update. There'll be an emphasis area action plan. And then the 2023 vulnerable road user assessment is part of that as well. That's already out there on the web, but these 3 pieces of the puzzle will be out there. Thank you to Joey and Yolanda for signing the document today. It's great. Like I say, we'll have it together sometime early next week and have it on the web. Over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out how we're going to tackle the action plan and the emphasis areas in that action plan. And then what do we need to do to be able to prioritize those actions and move us forward over the next 5 years. Thanks. Just a reminder to everybody on the call and in the room today, what we have changed to 9 emphasis areas from 11 for this year. So lane departure, intersections, pedestrians, bicyclists, personal mobility, seatbelts and car seats, substance impaired driving, older drivers, safer speeds, motorcyclists, and younger drivers. Next slide. And what I want us all to think about as we work on this implementation is the total 0. And looking at this data, on your left is the urban fatalities and serious injuries. On your right is the rural fatalities and serious injuries. It really shows the differences between urban and rural fatalities and what we have to achieve to be able to start moving towards 0. There's a lot of areas, there's a lot of issues, and it is an urban and rural issue. Next slide. So for instance, lane departure in an urban setting, lane departure is 37% of the urban fatalities and serious injury, and it's 62% in your rural locations. That's but inversely, when you're looking at pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries, of course, it's more percentage-wise in the urban area versus the rural area. So we got a pretty big challenge ahead of us. We've had a pretty big challenge for the last 5 years. We've got a pretty big challenge over this next 5 years. And I'll close on this. Safety is a shared responsibility to get us to 0. Get all those categories starting to move to half and starting to move to 0. We're going to be working through implementation work groups. We're going to try to keep this group informed of what's going on and try to maintain continual engagement over the next 5 years. And with that, I'll take any questions if y'all have any.
Joe, thank you for that, and I'll kick the comments off anyway. We'll do the same thing as far as if there's anybody in the room or anybody online. First of all, I mean, I think we can all see that these goals are going to be difficult, if not impossible to meet. And I say that really for 2 reasons. First and foremost, too many people are getting killed on our highways and byways. And it's very interesting to me that we have a goal to get to 3,028 fatalities by 2035. So our goal is to kill 3,000 people. It just doesn't sound like, and I know that's not what the goal is. Just to kind of talk that through and think about it, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You know, so we all have to work together to improve what's happening in our state. And I think you'll see some of that in the highway safety plan when you see it next week. It's a plan that's put together by DOT staff, people in that room, the people online, and people all across the state. This is not a DOT plan. It's a North Carolina plan. So we've all got to work together to make a difference here. And we're going to have to, in some ways, get out of the box and figure out how to do different things that we're not doing today. It's a big responsibility. And we have all had employees, our own employees, get killed out on the highways, get seriously injured out on the highways, whether they were working when that happened, or whether they were just out on a personal business that happened. It could have been in a vehicle, it could have been a pedestrian, it could have been a bicycle, or all of the above. And we've got a heavy lift to make a difference. Looking at the numbers that Sean just showed, I've asked Brian and his team to look at programmatic improvements that we can do for pavement marking.
And I think that'll be a big thing to help, especially in the rural area, help with those lane departure or run off the road crashes. And for the pedestrians in the urban areas, we're doing a number of things that you see in some of the big cities, like the leading pedestrian intervals at your traffic signals, the no turn on reds, lower speed limits. We're looking at doing that in a lot more urban areas across the state to actually help give the pedestrians, some safety that they need out there because of the distracted driving and the speeds that we see by motorists in every community in North Carolina and across the country for that. We've got to do something different when we've got those normal road users out, crossing the roads, walking along the roads, and we're trying to do it. And based on the numbers you see, we're starting in those downtown urban areas when you have a lot of pedestrians where the public should be expecting to see pedestrians, not ignoring them or not paying attention to where that 2, 3, 4, 5,000 pound vehicle can really do some damage. So I just wanted to start with that. Happy to take other comments and questions from anybody on Sean's presentation. But I hear come out online. Anybody got anything? Okay, so now we're going, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, someone who's relatively new to this committee, I went back and looked at some of the early documents from when the committee was first formed about 20 years ago, and it did look like at that time it was contemplating that this committee would play a pretty major role in sort of trying to coordinate a lot of this process and being involved. So I'm glad to hear that Sean sees a role for the committee to really get more involved in trying to make this work and get to those goals. And I guess one area that I would also mention that I think is an opportunity is through our annual resurfacing program to look at opportunities for lane reallocations. And I know when you were in the Division 5 office, we did a number of those in Durham, and we did see some safety improvements from those, when you have the right volumes where it will work. I think when the fleet streets policy was revised in 2019, there was a maintenance recommendation, and I think some of those things haven't completely been implemented yet, but I'd say that's one opportunity that we should look at, the things that we can do, relatively quickly as part of the resurfacing program.
Good comments. Thank you for that. And I agree with that. I think from an infrastructure standpoint, when you've got 80,000 miles of highways, it's hard to make a big difference with limited funds. But the recent resurfacing program across the state is a good idea because we resurface hundreds of miles a year. And there may be opportunity to do lane reallocations. Just look where the edge line is. One thing we did, mainly because of the edge drop-offs in Division 5 when I was there, we pulled that edge line in a few inches on purpose. So it wasn't just right on the edge of pavement. We're using safety edge a lot now. Really should be using it everywhere, on all these surfaces. And that helps some with the lane departures and the over corrections. So thank you for the comments there. Anybody else? Okay, so we're going to move to our Governor's Highway Safety Director, Mark Ezel, talk about the highway safety plan.
Great, thank you very much. All right, give a little overview today of not only the program, but also the application submission process that we have, and then a little bit about the secret that we found. Next slide. This is the slide that I include to explain what we do. You all know this already, but we work to promote traffic safety and reduce the number of fatal crashes and penalties. We do that in actually really 3 ways. One is, of course, through our grants and programs, which is one. We receive funding through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, through NHTSA. That funding has forcefully increased since the bipartisan infrastructure law and reauthorization about 25%. So that's good news. But in addition to the grants and programs that we do, we also do a lot of public engagement and public awareness activities. Most folks are familiar with the click it or ticket news and boost campaigns that we have that are enforcement related. The third thing that we do that I didn't mention here is in order to receive funds around impaired driving and occupant protection, we must have task forces on all of those areas, on both of those areas, rather, to evaluate the impaired driving and occupant protection tools that we have in the state and make recommendations for improvements. And so those are the things that we do. A little bit, next slide, about our grants process. We work on a federal fiscal year. So our grants begin on October 1st, doing backwards planning. It is in the fall of the previous year. This is not illustrated up here, but in the fall of the previous year is when we do outreach to communities, go into communities, actually have meeting with communities that have an interest in applying for these grants. This year, we also, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, by virtue of reauthorization, one of the requirements is that we do public engagement activities. So we are doing those in the fall to provide input into our plan. From January 1st to 31st is when we actually have our grant system open. And so it's applied during that time. We have the ability also, and we do this some, but we try to do it rarely, to do off-site reviews. The need that can be solved off-cycle. From February to May, we go through those applications, which usually number about 150, 160 with a fine-tooth comb. We create matrix based on what we've determined through some of the work that Sean's group does and other pieces of data, what the needs are, prioritize funding, and then around the May time period, what we're doing now, in fact, is we expect to do in the next 2 weeks is notify grantees whether or not they are able to go to the next step. The next step is to put together the those conditions and approvals that you mentioned here, that other mentioned last bullet by September. May to June, we are putting together our annual grant application, as well as refining those applications. Oftentimes, somebody will put in an application, there's not quite enough money for that line item, or there needs to be specific changes, and we work. Annual grant application is essentially our application to NHTSA for the funding. That application must be approved. And with funding is approved to begin on October 1st. Previously, we have had to do a complete plan, but that includes some significant analysis. This, with reauthorization, we are now required to do a 3-year plan. That we did last year, the annual grant application in theory is just an update to that plan with the list of your grants. I have found, having done this last year, that it is actually complicated. That was the so annual grant application must be in by August 1st, or no, that's an approval. Then it's grants for the next fiscal year. July to September is when we expect respective grantees to put together their conditions, their approvals. Oftentimes, for instance, if it's a municipality, then they'll need to get city council approval. If it's a county, they'll need to get county commissioner approval, agree to the grants conditions. And October 1st is when the grant. Next slide. These are some of the emphasis areas that we see. I mentioned to you that one of the requirements that is somewhat new to us is to increase our public participation and engagement activities. This means reaching out to underserved communities, getting their input into what should our plans look like, and then considering that as that plan is put together. So, what makes that a little bit sticky is that the federal requirement is that any of that that's done in-house must come out of our DNA budget, our program and administration budget. What makes that sticky is the program and administration budget can only be 50% federal. And so basically we're depending on state funds in order to really determine the size of that program and administration budget. Our state funds are fairly low. The reauthorization does allow up to 18% of our 402 monies to be used for program and administration, but we're not anywhere remotely close to that. So, but there will be efforts around public participation. Work with that. We one of the partner groups that has been created with some funding from us in the insurance industry is a group called the North Carolina Alliance for Safe Transportation, or NCAST. And so we have provided a grant to NCAST to do much of the work around setting up those public meetings. We had a great one in Robson County about 3 weeks ago. We had over 100 people there. We did this in conjunction with the governor's crime commission. So it was talking more about public safety at large, but still a lot of folks there really engaged in this effort. We're now looking at doing something similar in the National Excom area and in Charlotte, and we're also going to be doing focus groups. A big focus on pedestrian safety. Brian, of course, mentioned some of the numbers there. There's a significant concern, so we're funding some specific efforts there. Of particular note is our Vision Zero effort. We're continuing to do community growth there. The work that at least two others, UNC have done there, as well as the Robson County Vision Zero effort led by Board Member Brady Hunt, is really paying off. There's a leadership institute where many of these Vision Zero community leaders come together for 3 days and learn how to continue to do their plans. The team at UNC also does outreach to other municipalities to encourage them to become Vision Zero communities. We have another effort through the NHTSA 1906 funding source to include our racial profiling database, poorly named effort that does great things. Essentially, North Carolina was the first state of the union to require larger law enforcement agencies to report data on their stops, including but not limited to the race of those involved. And in other states that have done this, they have also done some significant analysis of that data that can then assist law enforcement in ways to better serve their communities. And so we've received money from 1906 that has been provided to the SBI, and the SBI is responsible for maintaining that database. So we're looking forward to seeing what goes with that. Also, another funding area that has been funded as a result of the reauthorization is an effort around hot cars, preventing hot cars. The North Carolina Department of Insurance and Safe Kids are longtime grantees of ours, but for the first time ever, this is one of our core funding categories, or requirement regarding core funding categories. In addition, the federal law now requires 405B funds, which is our applicant protection fund. A certain 10% of that needs to be spent on child safety suits. In previous years, they've been very reluctant to fund those suits. So we've had a little bit of leeway to do that, now a lot more. And then finally, we've got a real emphasis on engagement on the military basis. We're going to be working with NHTSA as well as Secretary Martin, Veterans Affairs, to do more outreach and educating some of the young adults around traffic safety issues. So, next. Couple emphasis areas real quickly: safe system, prevention, messaging around work zone safety. We've expanded our enforcement area by virtue of having some additional monies. We're able to do some enforcement in areas that we presently haven't been able to concentrate on as much. Technology, we've got grants with DND and State Crime Lab. And then finally, I mentioned our working groups. We're actually, and this is something I'll talk about in a little bit, our toxicology working group. A little bit more about that. The other thing I wanted to discuss very quickly, next slide, is our seatbelt survey. Each year, the Governor's Highway Safety Program is responsible for establishing the state's official seatbelt use rate. We don't have those numbers yet for 2024, but I want to tell you a little bit about our 2023 numbers. Next slide. 2023 official seatbelt use rate is 92.2%. This is fairly good news for us. It is higher than it has been in a number of previous years. The problem is, of course, we're still seeing approximately 45% of those fatalities unbuckled. So clearly, 7 to 8% are creating significant issues for us with these numbers. But nevertheless, you can see some trend data. And you can see some data here indicating by race, by sex, and by age. Next. This is a little bit about our trends. You can see where it's gone up pretty significantly. We are now about where we have been at some of our highest points in 2016 and 2017. Significant dips. You can imagine in 2020, we had a lot of difficult behaviors. It was also a difficult thing to measure, but we're steadily improving from our 2020. Next. And then this gives you an idea, especially there on the combined rate of what they do. So we're happy with 2023 numbers are the highest they've been since 2010. So that is at least a bit of good news. We see some of the other things that aren't questioned. So, go through that quickly. Any questions?
Thank you, Mark. Questions for Mark in the room? Good stuff, especially on the growth and the CEOs. How about online? Anybody online have anything for Mark? Okay, we'll keep moving. Next presenter is Colonel Johnson to talk about the highway safety trailers, the Blue Line initiative that DOT and Highway Patrol partner.
Good morning, everybody. Brady Johnson from Highway Patrol. This project was something kind of thinking outside the box for us. We currently started out as a commercial vehicle enforcement initiative. It kind of expanded from there. Team here, and I had First Sergeant Jackson kind of brief on this PowerPoint in just a second. But they presented this idea. I liked it, fully supported it, and it's been we've gotten a lot of we've got positive feedback on that. We've had some folks that didn't understand it. We've had to go out and do some education on that so people understand what we're doing with these things. But we started out with 15 of these signs, and we expanded it to 50, but we're down to 49 now because one of those signs took one for a team and stopped drunk driver for us and works on it. So we don't have that. But it's we do appreciate the partnership with DOT on that, and heard a lot of good things this morning. We work with Martinsville frequently. Of course, the state highway safety plan. He asked about that, but we've got to see it too for as long as I can remember and develop that. So this is just an expansion of that. But I'm gonna let First Sergeant Jackson go through the PowerPoint now, so y'all kind of see what we got. Real quick, just before, I'll give a little of the why and the how. So the first 25, and we'll see on here, were purchased through US DOT funds, Federal Motor Carrier Safety did that for us. So to explain why they paid for that in the beginning, most people, when I talk to groups like this, don't understand what has dramatically changed with the commercial industry in the last few years. If you go back to the history of the cell phone, really started in the 90s, truck drivers didn't get it. There was no need. They didn't work across the country. They were not reliable across the country. and they were extremely expensive if you left your area. Well, that really kind of changed here recently. If you went 20 years ago, the commercial industry, they were all on CVs and they were alert of everything. They knew every bump in the road. They knew where every tire was in the road. They knew where every car was sitting on the shoulder. They knew where we were. They knew when I left my driveway. And they would get on and say, he just left the driveway. Wait, man's coming. Get off the road. So that's gone now. I beg you to look up and look at truck drivers as you go down the road. You're going to be astonished at how many of them are on call. So Federal Motor Carrier is very aware of that. So thinking outside the box of how can we get them to pay attention, especially inside our work zones. You know, a commercial motor vehicle entering the work zone on a phone, not paying attention, that's just catastrophic. You know, you're talking 80 miles per hour. Some of these trucks weighing 80 to 200,000 pounds, not paying attention. You would think, who would do that and go through a work zone? I can tell you, truck drivers call it hazmat and every dangerous thing you can think of. It's really bad. But so this board, what's different with it? Some of you are very familiar with it. It's not just a regular message board. It has a couple other features, but for the most part, it's essentially a message board. You can get the next one. So like I said, Federal Motor Carrier granted they paid for the first 25, the last 25 that we got, so our partnership with DFD. And the main focus is it's a twofold. So our safety initiatives, a big part of that is how do we get that information out to our truck drivers? Advertising on the news, billboards, those are extremely expensive. You know, within the highway patrol, we didn't have a budget to do that, but we needed to do it. So that kind of was the Kickstarter of this. You know, can we buy a message board, put it inside only a rest area where we can speak to our truck drivers that come through. So instead of one billboard or two billboards, every way station, every truck sees it. So, and then that's what kind of started it. When you go to the next. So this is the ones that we have currently out. So what happened once we got them and just figured out that these boards work different with the blue light and with the lights and the ability to display the speed of the vehicle. My theory was it would work good at work. So I partnered with our Western division. Chad Franklin up there was the first to let me put one in a work zone. And it was astonishingly amazing to get people's attention. So those first 25, this is where they all are. We've got 10. If you've gone down I-95 through that project at all, we have 10 down there. We just sent 2 to Washington, near the coast, big roundabout they're doing. And it's in more of, it's a lot of traffic going through there, but it's not interstate. And they were having a mess in there, so it's helped them a lot. The I-26 project, which those 6 have been up there for going on 4 years now. So they've been operating up there in that I-26, I-40 where they're widening for a long time now. We just delivered 2 to Statesville. They've got a big project. It's a nighttime project. Let's get ready to start. And then we have 4 on Orange County. So if you're on I-40 here in Orange, the big issue they have is those dump trucks trying to merge from the inside back out to the fast lane. And those cars are just not slowing down. So they only, if you go through, you might notice our boards aren't on. So they're only turning those boards on when they're actively having dump trucks go out. So if you go through, they're not actively having dump trucks going out, it's not even turned on. They still collect data, but they're just get the next. Then we have another 25 ready to go, sending it out. This is just the main focus is our way stations are in our crash area. So when we do get to advertise within our way stations, it's getting the attention of those truck drivers to let them know the penalties that are occurred when we do those inspections, write those tickets. But that's our main focus is our high crash corridors and our work zones. So we did create a policy. As everybody knows, there is the federal policy for the work for the message boards. We did mirror that. So we are in compliant if we do put them somewhere out on the road. We don't just go throw those out there anywhere. If we do, it's by request. And if it's in a work zone, it's by request of the DOT. We don't just show up, stick one in your work zone. It's planned where you want it, how you going to use it. That's right. And you can go ahead and hit it 3 times and go ahead. So the big difference is that ability. So its ability changes by the speed of the vehicle. So you can have different messages and it's infinite of what you want to, you can do. So at different speeds. So if it's a 55-mile-per-hour work zone, you don't, and if people are doing 55, you don't want it to do anything to be blank. And then as they start going up in speed, you can have the sign react with different speeds. You can have it just simply say, slow down. If they're doing that 55, you don't want them, or 60, then or 65, where you can say, hey, you're going too fast. Or then you can kind of switch over, and when I say the full is displaying the actual speed with blue lights. And we tend to use the blue lights at the very upper end. So those people are coming through really fast. So trying to get them from that 70 range back down to the 55 range, and you have to work with it within each zone to accomplish that. The big difference is it's reactive of what the driver should do. You can keep go all the way there. Just some other, that hybrid down there is that ability to make that message do what you want with different things. And the really neat things is traffic data collector. So those speeds and everything that's happening out there is collecting that data too. So I've done a lot of testing of before, during, afters, put signs out and we have data collectors we put before, see what their incoming speed was, what's their speed at the sign, and then we can actually check it with other data collectors after. But the reactivity of the sign is what's different. So just an example of what we do, every work zone is different. So what you're trying to achieve within the work zone is different. But typically we either just have it say nothing, or we'll just have it say work zone, or one of those others like radar or active radar. So they know that it's our board. And then we change it as according to what their speeds are and as their speeds go up. There should be a video if you can click on it. On this one, it's just a short video. You can see a vehicle went by fast. It kicked up, showed the speed. So if the other vehicles are not speeding, if you don't want to hit the next one. And then within our way stations, this is an example of that. So we have Operation Safe Drive, we have Operation Air Brake, we have a trafficking, we have a lot of different campaigns that we do enforcement wise throughout the year. So we'll take the boards inside the way station and let them know, hey, where it's Operation Air Brake, we're going to stop here, we'll check the appearance. So that's what the kind of message we use within the side of our way station. And so ours are gray. We're the only ones in the state with the gray. So there are local agencies that have them, cities, counties have them. Theirs are almost all blue. Every one that I've seen, it's a police department, has a blue one. Of course, DOTs are orange. We went with the slate gray, and then they all have our patrol logo on. So if you do see a blue light trailer, it should be a gray trailer that has blue lights on. So the big reason is that reduction of fails and trying to get the truck drivers to pay attention, all vehicles to pay attention. But the other part of that is this, we do special operations throughout the year, and we have always historically leaned on DOT to say, hey, we're going to do a massive project at this welcome center. We need this many signs. And then we'll 2 days ahead of time, something happens in that district and they don't have forward. We've planned all these resources. We have other agencies coming, feds are coming, and then we get there, we don't have any boards to create, to do the event. And then, 15 years ago, I think it was, when I was in Lumberton and Lumberton was underwater, I said, man, if we had no boards, we could come down with boards of our own. It was weeks in a lot of places. I stood on I-95 for days and days and days with just a patrol car because DOT was overrun. Every road was out. So they didn't have a board to bring us, so 3 weeks later was able to get a board and help people get off quicker, easier. So the ability for us to have our own boards for emergency situations, because we're pretty much going to be there first, we can get those boards and head that way. So one trooper with one board can do a lot more than one trooper just. And then the work zones. So those driving behaviors and the distraction that's in the work zone is just unbelievable. We had the work zone safety kickoff, and the very same day we had another worker struck and killed. But the ability to get that attention of the driver and keep even our people safe. We can put them in places that you typically can't put a patrol car. And then, like the colonel said, that sign gets hit by someone not paying attention, then it's just a sign you can replace, whereas an officer you can't replace when they've been killed in our workers. So having that ability to have a sign do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, when it needs to be, is pretty priceless.
Is that it for us? Yes, sir. I just think it's just everybody knows some of the biggest questions I've got, law enforcement agencies. You know, some big ones, like just construction crews, getting these trailers, lights on them, showing up. We explain they belong to us, their hours, we manage them, that kind of calmed all that down. So, the questions you have, I'm going to answer.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, First Sergeant. And I'll reiterate that, the law is pretty clear in North Carolina. You have to be a law enforcement official to possess a blue light and use it. So that's one of the reasons for the MOU to come to DOT and highway patrol. And these things are planned use. We don't, I can't even go with the Secretary of Transportation. I don't have authority to do that. If we have an employee move on, it's under the strict direction and guidance of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol. And they've been trained on what to do. So thank you, First Sergeant. I think this is a well thought out, well coordinated effort. I'm definitely interested in hearing statistics as we move forward with the data points that you're collecting, speed before and speed after. You already mentioned a second ago that we have people killed in work zones on a regular basis. There's a Barn Hill employee killed down in New Hanover County a few weeks ago. I think it was an impaired driver late at night, high speed and low speed environment. Those things happen. Anything we can do to kind of control that, corral that, and get people to really follow closer in what they should be doing can help us all. So thank you for those efforts. I will add, I know I got Victor Barber, he was on the phone earlier with AGC. They're our contract partners, and they've been big proponents of anything we can do to improve safety in work zones. So Victor, I don't know if you've got anything to add, or I don't want to put you on the spot, but give you the floor for a second if you want to take it.
Thanks, Secretary Hopkins. I appreciate that. I just want to reiterate the great cooperation State Highway Patrol and DOT have is, you know, our work zone safety issues are our number one priority here as we move forward. We've had way too many accidents, as everybody knows, but anything we can do to get people to slow down and educate them is a great thing.
Thank you, Victor.
Yes, sir, Colonel. Just, you know, I know you said it. We got, so this thing, we've been doing it maybe a little over a year now. So that it will collect data. We know professional engineers know data. And I didn't say anything, but that is reported down here from NC State helps us with that. And we'll be able to give you some really good reports here in the near future. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Colonel. Yes, sir, Mark.
One thing, Colonel, just so you're aware, this would be a good thing for us to feature in late July when we have the Speed Rex Lives campaign. We'd love to partner up on this. So we may not have. One thing I'll point out is because I've had a few questions on this is there's not a speed limit sign on those message boards, and that's for a reason. We put a speed limit sign on the message board that it's a traffic control device. We don't actually want that to be a traffic control device. We wanted to really focus on what its for purpose is. Work zones are well signed for speeds for devices throughout the work zone. So but that we do get questions from time to time because it says your speed is, and people are used to seeing, you know, speed limit sign below that and flash that your speed is. But I say that because there are some rather particular definitions in some of our federal standards about strobe lights and flashing lights and our traffic control devices. So that we've navigated that in a way that accomplishes the purpose.
Any other comments in the room?
Yes, sir.
Kind of a nuts and bolts question, just curious, though, you mentioned deploying these things, do all of your cars have the trailer hitch, like in any full vehicle that is running?
So this thing is based out of our commercial vehicle enforcement side of the house, that good operations, which has a statewide reach. Those, all those troopers that are managing that drive, all that is with trailer. We don't have more back in Dodge Chargers.
That's
Good question. Good question. Anything else in the room? How about online?
Yeah, I think he's, starting to share, some information for the next presentation.
Tom's online?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Tom Robbins, I believe, is online to talk about work zone safe driver training.
All right, thank you, everybody. I'm going to try to share my screen here. 1 second.
Sound approach.
Stand by, still course. All right.
We were laughing, Tom. There's a lot of noise outside the building here with some paving work going on.
There we go. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for having me present today. My name is Tom Robbins. The reason why I'm here, kind of the genesis of it, I served the former governor as the Deputy Secretary of Energy, so handle all of our oil and gas and policy and work here on behalf of the governor. And what that means in practical sense in the community level was that there was thousands of trucks moving in our rural counties. And when you're doing that amount of energy, what that equates to is thousands and thousands and thousands of trips going back and forth on rural 2 lanes. So I raised my hand and said, let's go address that and put together the effort in the state of Oklahoma to modernize our approach to energy traffic and safety within our local communities. Very successful, reduced our crashes by 63% in our targeted area. As I did that, I noticed good friends of mine, the Secretary of Transportation, our director of our Highway Safety Office, and others wearing these orange ribbons. And I was like, hey guys, what's this about? And they said, well, Tom, don't you know we've had 72 of our employees killed? And it shook me to the core. I had no idea. In fact, when they said we've had more of our DOT guys killed than even highway patrolmen, and I said, it's you tell me it's just about more dangerous to go throw some cones down and to wait, be a flagger than it is to, chase a bad guy with the gun. And they said, yeah, it is. And they said, Tom, there's a memorial out in front of our DOT headquarters. And so that's really what sparked the conversation. And what I found out was we were in a crisis. Just like in North Carolina, I mean, Oklahoma was no different. Our numbers were headed in the wrong direction. We have flooded our streets, as you all know, with digitally drunk drivers and now pedestrians. Those things are literally colliding. And we're seeing more serious injuries and fatalities within the construction industry, but then also, unfortunately, with our young drivers. And when I kind of popped the lid and said, well, what are we doing to address work zone education and our first responder move over safe training for new teen drivers? The response was a little bit sheepish, and that if and when Oklahoma was educating and engaging our new teen drivers, we were doing so with a plastic bag with a little cartoon pamphlet on it, a little cartoon on there that said, don't be a distracted driver, with a pamphlet in it that kids would probably then throw in the trash if and when they got it. We, like most states, were relying on maybe 1 or 2 questions that might randomly come up in the driver's test, which would ultimately, ask a kid what color is the sign for work zone safety. So when talking to my good friend, then Mike Patterson, the Secretary of Transportation, and asking him how he felt about that, he said it's woefully inadequate. And I said, well, let's think outside the box. Let's go do it. Of course, you all know if you raise your hand and say there's a problem and then say, let's go find a solution, a lot of times that gets you an assignment. And our governor, our commissioner of public safety, and our Secretary of Transportation said, Tag, you're it. Go leave the cabinet and go solve this problem for us. And so that's what I've done. And it's a totally new approach that Oklahoma has taken. But what you guys are saying in North Carolina is exactly the same conversations that we're having. It can't just be a DOT plan. It's got to be a statewide plan. It can't just be an ODOT plan. It's got to be an Oklahoma plan. And ultimately, we got to stop just talking to people that know and care about the issue, which is our contractors and subs and the industry and our highway patrol. We need to get and modernize the tools and resources for our new teen drivers. So we literally came up and the ODOT, the commissioner, and our highway patrol and everybody and the governor decided to embrace an approach of shredding our pamphlets that I proposed to them and completely rethinking, coming up with new tools and resources and how do we educate and engage, particularly our teen drivers as they're learning how to successfully navigate our roads. So that's launched Work Zone Safe, and I'm here to tell you guys a little bit about it. I've met with the Carolina, with Victor and their team. They had me come down. I met with the Secretary of Transportation for South Carolina, and I'm going to tell you about the successes that we have had and how we're ready if you guys want to be able to start implementing this in your state as well. So here's the mission, and I put this in on there, is that the mission is really simple. And it's something that I know is dear to you guys and that you share, is it for every new teen driver to know about the face and families behind the flag, cones, and flashing lights, as they learn to confidently navigate work zones and share the road with first responders, period. Right now, unfortunately, they just don't get that. It wasn't happening in Oklahoma. There was no requirement for them to drive through a work zone, no face behind the flag chat that they had. And we wanted to change that. We wanted to tap into that empathy. And then we wanted to start recognizing and rewarding teen drivers who are champions, who are willing to step forward, learn about work zone and commit to be a work zone and move over safe driver and do that. So we did two different things. Let me see if I can here, it's gonna let me share my, oh, come on now. Let me see if it'll let me share this PowerPoint. Come on now. Hey, hold on. All right, let's see, this should work right here. Oh, that's cute. I'll think, hold on. There we go. It's up there now. I like it. You guys see that?
It's our, you got it, Tom.
All right. So, and sorry, if it's, so here's the deal. This is our mission. Talk to you about that. You guys already know about the crisis. We've flooded our streets with digitally drunk drivers. Teen drivers have absolutely no background, education, understanding of how to successfully navigate a work zone outside of one or two questions. This literally was that plastic bag and pamphlet that our DOT was randomly handing teens if and when they'd ever educate and engage them. And then this ultimately became our opportunity right here to do a hands-on, which is not something I'm going to focus on here today, but a program that we started about just under 2 years ago to do a hands-on program where our kids would actually get an opportunity to meet with our DOT employees, contractors, turnpike guys, and learn about the work zones. And then what I'm going to focus on here is our online learning that we completely created and launched here in Oklahoma. And so I'm going to skip over this. I put this in the chat, but these are, our DOT was all in, our Secretary of Transportation was 100% supportive, Commissioner of Public Safety. So they actually created some videos here. They had 2 public PSAs promoting the program when we launched it voluntarily, and then an overall video there that you can see on the hands-on program. So you guys can click on those, and Victor and others can provide that to the group as a whole to see how the DOT came in and supported it and got the word out. But we went all in. We created with our Road Building Association, with our AGC in Oklahoma and its partners, a safety coalition that funded the program, and also scholarships that would be given out to recognize and reward teams who took the program when we first started. We also decided to have a Work Zone Safe Take Center Court night where we would have faces behind the flag, our first responders, our DOT employees, join with teens who had taken the course and who were randomly selected to win Thunder tickets. Super successful. And then we did some other things. We identified some insurance folks that would give some safe driver discounts and some local businesses that actually were interested in recognizing and rewarding teams as well. So how did we start? We started with this plastic bag and this pamphlet. How did it end? Well, right now, hands-on across the state between 2021 and 2024 in our hands-on program where we do our face behind the flag talk. That's Trooper Eric Foster, who was hit in a work zone. He's there, and we've done over 20,000 teens that have gone through that program, hands-on voluntarily, representing over 250 high schools in the state of Oklahoma. When we launched our online course, and I'm going to show you guys here momentarily, to supplement the 2 questions that they were getting, but to provide a much more robust education on what they actually needed to successfully and confidently navigate a work zone and share the road with our first responders. When we first launched it in a voluntary way, we had 3,000 of our Oklahoma teen drivers take that course. In the middle there, that's Senator Jessica Garvin. We very intentionally partnered with our legislative friends at the very beginning as we did these different events with our DOT employees, educating and engaging our legislators on the importance of our work zone safe efforts for our teen drivers and for Move Over Safe for our first responders. With our scholarships, that's been super successful. We have awarded since 2021, we give out a monthly scholarship, and now we've awarded over 60 $500 scholarships, so totaling over $30,000 in the state of Oklahoma, which kids now know about, they're excited about. In the middle of that picture, what you would see there is Representative Nicole Miller. I actually had breakfast with her this morning. She's the chairman of our DOT Transportation Appropriations Committee, handing out one of those checks. Super excited to be able to do that. This is our Work Zone Safe Take Center Court Night at the Thunder. Well over 100 of our teens, their guests, usually their parent or guardian, joining with our DOT employers, contractors, first responders, all who are celebrating the fact that they voluntarily took that course. And we wanted to recognize and reward them, but then also give them a chance to spend a night with the face and families behind the flag cones and flashing lights. When we first started this, it was a voluntary effort in the state of Oklahoma. We did that for about 18 months. We got some great traction, great support, obviously with the scholarship, with the Thunder tickets. We had a couple thousand kids that went through the program. We got very positive feedback about it. And then I said, hey, look, guys, what we need to do next is we need to respond to this public health crisis of the tragedies that are happening on our road and modernize the effort to be able to do Work Zone Safe in Oklahoma. And so we decided to introduce a bill, and I got it co-authored by our chairman of Transportation, Representative Ronnie Johns, and our Senate chairman of Senate Public Safety Committee, Mr. Senator Darcy Yeck. They were the bill sponsors on it. And the language of it was very simple. The language on the bill was that we wanted to create just a new requirement. It was literally just three lines. And it said, must complete a course approved by the Oklahoma Department of Transportation on teen driver, work zone, and first responder safety. So what we did was in the state of Oklahoma, this bill would authorize the Department of Transportation to take this course, which they were using in a voluntary way, and make it a requirement for teens in the state of Oklahoma to be able to get their driver's license. No state in the country had any type of effort like this or any type of work zone move over safe requirement like this in the entire country. So we were pioneering it as the first. We received overwhelming support. It passed overwhelmingly and unanimously in both the House and Senate committees. Then went to the House and Senate floor, and except for a couple of yahoos, looks like about 4 there in the House, we got it successfully done. And then ultimately, we got it passed in the state of Oklahoma, and it was signed by the governor. That went into law starting November 1st, 2023. So beginning in November 1st of 2023, every single teen driver, or except every single teen in the state of Oklahoma, before they would receive their intermediate driver's license, had to successfully complete the course and then turn in their course completion certificate with their paperwork to our DMV, which we call Service Oklahoma. Since we've done that, we're averaging over 5,500 teens a month. Let me repeat that. We're averaging over 5,500 Oklahoma teens a month who are taking the Oklahoma Work Zone Safe course, learning how to be a confident work zone and move over safe driver. And so we've had well over 20,000 of our teens since November successfully complete the course. And it's well known, it's well received. We haven't had any real hiccups with that. And we became the first in the country to be able to do that. That's about when Victor and the Carolinas AGC rang me up and said, hey, we heard about this deal that you're doing in Oklahoma. Can we figure out how to be able to partner? And so we started in those conversations about how to be able to do that. Carolina wasn't the only AGC to call me. I got another call from a bunch of other states. One of those happened to be Wisconsin. Wisconsin said, hey, we want to be number 2. We think this is fantastic and this is great. So we worked with the AGC, signed a contract with them. We developed Wisconsin Work Zone Safe. And then behind the scenes there, we put together a coalition to be able to fund and support that privately, but then also put together a coalition to introduce the legislation. And Wisconsin, they thought it would take maybe a session or two, a year or two to get it done, but they introduced a bill to require work zone safe education, at least 30 minutes of it approved by WSDOT, their DOT. So a very similar model for Oklahoma, just slightly different. And they got that bill successfully signed by the governor last month. And so now it's the state law in the state of Wisconsin for all new teen drivers that they'll have to also take work zone safe curriculum in order to be able to receive their driver's license. WSDOT has adopted and approved the Wisconsin work zone safe curriculum. And I'll be heading out to, well, I was in Wisconsin about 2-3 weeks ago at the Astro Spring meeting. We did 3 press conferences across the state with the road builders to announce it. I'll be going back in June and be meeting with all of the driving schools as they roll this out and implement that to make sure that they don't have any hiccups and they know how they can do that to fulfill their statutory requirement. And so we've shred our pamphlets, we're all in Oklahoma. And then professionally, what I'm doing is I'm bringing it to other states. So that's a nutshell of kind of fast and furious, as fast as I can do it, as far as the history of it, why we did it, what the genesis of it, what the results have been, and then how other states are going to be adopting it. And then I can show you the course as well. But I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm just going to pause right there and to see if you guys have any initial questions before I show you the course itself.
Questions in the room for Tom? How about online? Anybody online? I'll vouch for Victor. He brought this right back to us in North Carolina. And he is pushing hard for us to be able to do this, which does make sense. We're trying to figure out how to move forward.
Well, I can promise you, if Oklahoma can do it, I know it's every state's a little bit different, but you know what we're finding is that we're receiving a lot of support for it. And the easiest way to do it, I believe, is to make it, if you can, just start moving. You do it voluntarily. So it's a plan just to not have it DOT focused, but it's a plan to involve all North Carolina. It's a target at your new teen drivers. And pretty much everyone agrees that given what's happening out on the roads and the distractions out there, that giving them new tools and resources is helpful. And so, you know, what a good way to go about doing it, which worked really well for us in Oklahoma, which worked in Wisconsin, which it looks like we're going to do in Colorado and some other states, is, you know, you launch the program voluntarily. Our road building association out here, just like Wisconsin, was able to successfully fund it and support it. And as it gets going, and then you get to the point, and it happens sooner than we thought in Oklahoma and sooner than we thought in Wisconsin, then you start introducing the legislation. I did fail to mention Illinois has also introduced their bill and just got it passed through one of their committees. So Illinois might be the next state that fully adopts it. So it's working in kind of regardless of, you know, blue or red or purple and that kind of stuff, which is encouraging. So let me show you the course. Any other questions? I want to pause there. I get pretty energetic, but I know we only have about 20 minutes. I want to respect your time. And so any other questions before I move on to the next piece here?
Tom, this is not a question. This is Victor. I just want to let you know, South Carolina may beat Illinois. The bill is passed and it's on the governor's desk to be signed.
All right, man. We'll have to follow up call because I know states are telling me, hey, Robbins, make sure we're next. But I'm excited that you guys are. I'm excited to get these updates. I've presented the National Lifesavers Conference. I just heard yesterday, ASHTO's invited me to the MASTO conference to present. So as states are getting a hold of this, it's widely being accepted and adopted, and rightfully so. I mean, guys, if we're being honest, you know, we need to modernize our inputs to get different outputs. It's so admirable, the goal that you have to get to zero, to cut fatalities of 50%. And Mr. Secretary, I agree with you. It's going to take out of the box thinking. It's going to talk modernization. And it's quite frankly, and our secretary would say, go right ahead. It's going to take ripping off the best ideas from every other state that's doing something that seems to get some traction and working if it means saving lives. I will tell you there's a standing invitation from our Director, Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Tim Gads, our Director of our Highway Safety Office. If anyone in North Carolina wants to come to the hands-on event, you guys can jump in. We'll show you how we do it. You guys can bring it back to your state and do it. We want you to be as successful as possible as you're saving lives. And, I'll sign a contract with the AGC Carolina to get the program up and running on the online stuff, but we want to share as much of this as possible. So let me just jump over to the, the part here where, let's see here. Let's see. So here's something really cool. I'm just going to show this to you real quick. On the back end, I can see all the analytics. So you can see in March, we had 6,268 signups. There's kids who are right now, as we're on the phone, learning about Oklahoma Work Zone Safe. This kid just signed up 1 minute ago, another person 2 minutes ago. So when you're thinking about new ways to educate and engage teens, and it's like, okay, we got to go out and do a program. The great thing about this is it's 24/7. It's online. This is how kids learn. I promise you, there are kids, for whatever reason, I have no idea how the teenage brain works, and I have 3 kids at home. They will take this course at 1:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. But the important thing is the information that they're getting, and we're getting it to them in their hands, and it's not a pamphlet. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like as far as, here we go, right here. This is the Wisconsin one, so you're gonna see in real time like what this actually looks like. This is an example of the curriculum. So they're gonna learn about distraction, speeding, seatbelts, how that applies in the work zone. We work with your DOT to put together the great content and curriculum that you already have and put that in a package that we focus on teens and that they'll understand. We're going to give them the impact that they need. So for example, here in Wisconsin, unfortunately, there was a young man who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, went into a work zone who was speeding, and he ended up being a fatality. His passenger was also another young man, a teenager, was wearing a seatbelt. He ended up surviving. We talked to kids about the knock at the door. Each one of these sections also has a quiz section, so they have to pay attention. They have to watch all the videos. I'm going to show you here. So you got distractions, seatbelt, speeding, signs, laws. They're going to learn from a teen driver perspective, the importance of work zone safety, the different merging devices, queuing. This is updated in real time. So if something's happened in the state of North Carolina, for example, that you guys are doing roundabouts, you're introducing a construction that's a new type of digital messaging. You guys, want to focus on zipper merges, or there's a weather scenario and you want to focus on something related to, that's going to be happening with Move Over Safe or whatever it is. The great thing about this, since it's not pamphlets that have been paid for sitting on a shelf that you got to get through, you can update this in real time, almost within seconds if you want, on our end to be able to highlight what you need. So we have mobile operations, work zones at night, check your knowledge. And by the way, this has all been signed, sealed, delivered, good housekeeping, seal of approval by ATSA, who partnered to be able to make sure that this part of it was focused and correct. And we launched here in Oklahoma, and now that we do it in other states. So the most important part to me, and hopefully you and that the kids really respond to, quite frankly, is this section here on the introduction to work zone faces. And like we say here, many faces, one goal, returning home safe. We introduce them to construction workers and contractors, fellow drivers and passengers, their fellow teens and first responders. And these kids have no idea. They have no idea. No one's ever told them. They haven't thought about it. When they're on their digital device, they're speeding, maybe not wearing a seatbelt, they're distracted and going by that construction zone. No one's ever talked to them about it. And so, as you see here, we introduce them to that in the first time ever, right when they're about ready to get their keys and get licensed. Here's the crazy thing, and it's unfortunate. Every state has too many examples. I know North Carolina will, unfortunately, too, where we're able to find something that really speaks to these young teen drivers. And so we use these personal examples, and we'll use the ones that you guys have in North Carolina to highlight, unfortunately, people that have been permanently injured or their lives were taken too soon. Here's the examples that we have in Wisconsin, 2 young men. I want to point out this young man, Mr. Zane Riley. He was 25 when he was killed in a work zone. He was working there and was killed by a teen driver. Interesting enough, the obituary, when the family published it in November 26th of 2022, they said Zane's family's plea to all who read his obituary instead of flowers is please slow down and work zones, right? Well, here's the interesting thing. When we launched Wisconsin Work Zone Safe just a couple of weeks ago, Zane's mother stood with us at the podium as this was announced with pictures of her son. And now what happens, it's a part of this program. They learn about Mr. Riley. And then I'm going to go all the way down here to the bottom. They're going to be asked about this particular incident. And in the quiz section, they're asked a couple of things. One is, what is Zane Riley's mother's name? Her name's Becky. We want them to understand that there's real people connected to these fatalities and these injuries. Number two, they're going to be asked, how old was the driver who killed Zane Riley? And by watching the video, reading the obituary, the news articles that we give them, they understand it was a fellow teen driver that was 17. And then we ask right here, and this just to me is just so powerful, and it was really emotional for the mother as she saw this and talked about it at the press conference, was Zane Riley's family asked all those who read this obituary to do what? Send flowers when the scholarship is on or no. They want you just to please slow down and move over in work zones. And it's been really powerful. As I've talked to Oklahoma kids who've taken this course now, I say, well, what's your takeaway when I see them? And they said, well, gosh, I need to put my phone down and people can get injured. I need to slow down. And I say, that's it. That's exactly what we want you to take away. So it's been very successful in the state of Oklahoma. Like I said, we're doing thousands. We've launched it now in Wisconsin. We'll be rolling it out with all their driver's ed. We've got other states knocking on our door. But that is the very quick, as fast as I can do it, kind of from a fire hose explanation of the who, what, where, and how. And next steps is we're just working with the Carolina's AGC, Victor and his group. When they come up with how they want to kind of fund it on our end to run the program and to have the curriculum. And however you guys decide that you want to do it, if it's voluntarily at first or if it's second, you pass legislation, we can handle that and we can do it. I'll tell you, our Secretary of Transportation here in Oklahoma, happy to talk to you all. Our Director and Engineer of Traffic Safety, our Director of Highway Safety Office, our Head of Service Oklahoma, which is our DMV, our Head of Communications for that put together the PSA. All of them are willing to talk to you all about how to do this, how to implement it. So I'm going to take again a deep breath there and just kind of field questions from you and kind of see what you guys want to know as far as what we did and then next steps with Victor and others and how to implement it in Carolina.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Tom. This is Mark Ezel, the head of the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program. I've spoken with Paul and D'Angela in Oklahoma, my counterparts there. And yeah, they say a lot of things about this effort.
Thank you. I appreciate that. They've been real. It takes a team effort, like you guys said, like y'all trying to do in North Carolina, and they've been a part of the team since day one. And it's because of them and with them and that we're able to be as successful as a team here. So.
Other comments or questions in the room? What about on the line? Tom, thank you for a great presentation, a great message. This certainly hits home. Like was mentioned earlier, we've all had employees and friends killed in work zones or on roadsides doing their job, and this is good stuff that y'all are doing, and I'm hopeful that we can join in the near future.
Well, thank you. And Victor, do you want to? I don't know if you can. If not, it's okay. Speak for a minute, like. As far as order of operations, is the idea still, partner with you guys as the Carolina AGC, and then and then work to get this set up here in the next couple of months, and then you guys potentially work on legislation if you get there, or what's the kind of thought on the next step, if any, that needs to be taken?
Okay, thanks, Tom. I think we're working to move forward. We're having good conversations with our legislative folks. And hopefully we'll get some kind of a bill introduced, or not introduced, but added, get this language added in some kind of bill in this short session. Our rules are kind of different, but we're working toward trying to get this implemented as quickly as we can.
All right. I'll follow up with y'all, but look forward to launching North Carolina Work Zone Safe. And if you are for third, let's get you top 5 and start rocking and rolling. I think if we get the thumbs up, on the funding side through working with Victor and all that kind of stuff, I think beginning of the school year we can be, we can launch and be ready to get this in the hands of those team drivers, if even on the first set of voluntary basis, and then work towards whatever goals you guys have in the state. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you spending time with us today. Okay, next on the agenda, Mr. Marquis, back to you with the state toxicology meeting update. Great, that is, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't have a PowerPoint for this. and I can just give you a little update on what's been going on. I mentioned to you before that our office, by virtue of federal regulations, has to have two existing task forces: an impaired driving task force and an occupant protection task force. And the responsibilities for those two is to, create policy, procedure recommendations and practice recommendations to improve outcomes in impaired driving and occupant protection. Those have been around since the 1980s. A lot of the impaired driving legislation that's come out since the 1980s, including the changes that were made in the early 90s came out. So one other need has come about that we've seen recently, and that is around toxicology. The NHTSA provided some funds to every state highway safety office about 8 months ago to have a meeting of all of the state toxicology interests to talk through some of the successes and also some of the deficits. And NHTSA provided money for an actual facilitator for this. And so we got together the Office of Chief State Medical Examiner, the FDA, the hospital folks, the Governor's Crime Commission, the coroners groups, a variety of different groups, and about 30 folks attending the initial gathering to talk through exactly these issues. We had DMV on some there to talk about issues related to their data. A number of people around the room were also present. The group had a very good meeting, and one of the things that clearly came out of that meeting is there were a lot of recommendations, a lot of areas that we need to address around toxicology. And that's especially true as it relates to addressing impaired driving issues. So, all that is to say that we are interested in having this task force meet on an ongoing basis, on a quarterly, 4 times a year at least. And we're in the process now of trying to, one of the things that I think is very important is that there be a facilitator for this group that, one, doesn't have much of has less of a stake in what happens, so they are truly facilitating the meeting. But second, and most importantly, understands toxicology. And so our second follow-up meeting was pretty much facilitated by me, master's degree in political science, not really the best person to be discussing toxicology. So our goal now is to provide some funding to a grantee that can at least help keep that discussion going with a toxicology working group that meets about 4 times a year. So I've been in touch with the Department of Justice. They have an interest in that. And then if that doesn't work there, so potentially some others that we think can use those funds to then contract with a consultant and help facilitate those meetings. So bring that to your attention. As I mentioned to you, the other 2 task forces we deal with are part of the Executive Committee for Highway Safety. I'd recommend that a toxicology working group be among the things that we look toward help create, and that we expect some recommendations.
Thank you. I appreciate that update. Like you, well, there's a lot of things I'm not qualified to do with. Like you, I don't think I'd be qualified to run that group. Say that. Any questions or comments for Mark on this?
I think,
Yes, sir.
toxicology working group is great. Because we have head of the state crime lab, medical examiner, and we don't know how many people die because of impairing substances, because medical examiners don't have the ability to test everybody who dies. And, so we're working through, the group is working through that, talking about that, looking at funding for the medical examiner's office.
Yeah, that's one of the clear needs. The good news is in the short section, there is some legislation to provide additional funding for that, but, we'll see how that happens. But that was one of Jenny Dean's, probably the most very. So,
Thank you for that comment.
And I'll add, and something that I just learned recently, we had 2 recent fatalities in DOT. There's a large backlog of medical examinations. It takes months and months in some cases to do that, and that's a big strain on families. So just from a data perspective, we're getting data, 4, 5, 6 months down the road. It's a huge lag.
it's especially bad, that if they test and find presence of alcohol, they're not in a position to even get involved because they don't have the staff. And, they've got the equipment, they just don't have the staff.
With the, our Cherokee Indians selling marijuana now, somebody takes it off the reservation or it drives in North Carolina to take it on the reservation. The need to be able to test for impairment-based cannabis. So we get more important.
Anything else in the room? Anybody online? Thank you, Mark. So, Lee, have you joined us to talk about potential legislative items? Lee Jackson? Unless you weren't on when we started.
Reached out to you.
Yeah, so there should be a handout at everybody's chair, and if we put a link to this, folks online, they have the same information. We'll get that added to the meeting link. There's a list of bills that have been introduced that pertain to some potential legislative items. That since the ones online don't have it, I would just read through this very briefly. First of all, House Bill 905, the short title is Disabled Veteran Motor Vehicle Tax Exemption. It's passed the first House reading and it's been referred to the Committee on Finance. House Bill 913, DOJ to study law enforcement officer certification and onboarding. It passed first House reading and has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations. House Bill 928, North Carolina State Highway Patrol Retention Act. It's also passed the first reading and has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations. House Bill 969 is the statewide commuter rail study. House Bill 978, Litter Reduction Act. 24 has been filed. I have looked at that bill personally, and that's basically a final deposit. That bill is. Senate Bill 821, Train Infrastructure Acceleration Act, has been filed. And I marked a few others that aren't on this list, and I'm sure this is not an exhaustive list, but there is House Bill 929, which is a highway safety omnibus bill. It does a number of things. A few things it's asking is operation of 24 hours of IMAX Center in Charlotte. And also it's asking us to record and store video our traffic cameras that are around the state. So mention that one. There's another one, House Bill 593 through restricted truck length. I don't even know how to say that going to code. Thank you for that. And that only changed the amount of fine. It's already illegal for the trucks that are certainly to do that. It's well noted, marked. They continue to do it on a regular basis. It causes a lot of problems through the years. And the last one I'll mention, House Bill 968, increases the punishment for failure to yield when there's severe bodily injury or fatality. So again, no change to the statute other than the actual punishment if that happens. So I apologize. That's the only ones I'm aware of right off the top of my hand. I'm sure there are others.
One is, House Bill 1043. House Bill 1043, basically, requires for those with admission interlock, if there's a violation in their final 90 days, have that extended another 90 days. And then we also can expect that legislation will be introduced in the short session to change our blood alcohol content level 0.08, 0.05, our the per se level. I can explain that.
Yeah, illegal per se, was 0.08 in North Carolina, some states up to 0.05 and saw a reduction in fatalities. Yeah, there is actually a bill pending, House Bill 145 does that. It has, getting it through crossover. So, okay. There's House Bill 211, which modifies DWI sentencing by deleting the 0.09 mitigating circumstance, the 0.09, which goes to show you just a little grade, a little crime as opposed to a serious crime. Therefore, you got less jail time today. There's a bill, House Bill 212, which graduates of drug and DWI courts will be eligible for conditionally restored driver's licenses. Again, these did not make crossovers. House Bill 147 changes the 30-day pretrial revocation prior to Bill 0.08 or 0.04 in commercial motor vehicle. Anybody who's charged with violent consent offense with 30-day pretrial revocation. And it has some funding to it to help forensic test for alcohol. Their budget, the real estate fees can be managed. And the final one I have is House Bill 85, which allows the alcohol screening device reading alcohol sensor. Now, the only thing that's admissible in evidence to prove probable cause is whether it's positive or negative. And this would allow the number to prove probable cause only, not convict somebody. That would reduce the number of pretrial motions. Those were the other ones.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Moore. And one thing is that the 0.05 issue is one that we see keeps coming out nationally. So far, Utah's the only state that's passed it. I personally, it's a heavy lift, and I think the type of thing that gets successfully pushed, in the final waning months of their administration, be taken on. But I can say that it's going to keep coming up, and at some point, it's going to be something that this group talk about one way or the other.
Yes, sir. Mr. Secretary, you have a question from Terry from Bike Walk NC.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I just want to add that there are two other DOT legislative changes bills, House Bill 198 and House Bill 199 that have made crossover. And just for this group, that the bicycle pedestrian funding limitation compromise language supported by NCDOT in House Bill 198 was removed last week before the Senate Transportation Committee. But we have hopes that that language and other language may potentially be reinstated in House Bill 199 as well. Both of those are the DOT legislative changes bills. Thanks for the contribution.
Yeah, Terry, thanks for that update. I didn't even think about mentioning that. Both of those bills, 198, 199, were introduced. I know 198 passed the House last year. I think 199 did, but neither passed the Senate. 199 is moving forward, 198 is moving forward in the Senate now. And we expect it'll be passed in the coming weeks. 199, and my terminology is in 198 is language that both sides can agree to. The department, like Terry said, we're supportive of other language in that deal that has been removed, but the things that are in it, both the House and the Senate agree to, and that seems to be moving forward. 199 will be for things that may take a little bit more time to get everybody on board with, and some other DMV items that haven't passed in the last couple.
So more to come on both of those in the coming weeks throughout the short session. Anybody else online got comments about pending legislation? We good in here? Thank y'all for that. So we'll move into agency updates. And, of course, then we'll allow an opportunity for anybody else if you've got anything for the group too. But Brian, let's just start with you and your staff. If y'all got any, DOT updates.
Yeah, just got a few, but, of course, Sean mentioned before the strategic highway safety plan signed today. Thank you, Secretary. Yolanda, for signing that quickly today. So that's a big thing. It's been probably, Sean, about 18 months of work. It's pretty almost process with a couple hundred stakeholders from across the state. It's a good strategic plan. Obviously, it has a lot of content in it that some of it will be difficult to move forward in the next 5 years, but there's a lot of content in it that we do think can move forward. But probably the best thing about that process is getting all the stakeholders together to have those conversations and identify and start understanding the complexity of the traffic safety challenges. It's not just one thing that Joel can do or we can do. It's everybody working together. So that's been a key thing. Related to that, I wanted to follow up on Sean's comments on performance metrics. A big part of that strategic highway safety plan process is to determine a goal for North Carolina. And whenever we've had this develop the goal, it's resoundingly that it's zero, right? The goal is zero, but the question is always, well, how long should it take to get there? 2045, 2050, those are numbers that get talked about. They set about 2045. And we use that goal to set our targets, our actual performance metrics that we give to FHWA to meet those annual requirements. And as Sean mentioned, we will likely fail those almost instantaneously because that's how hard it is even to get a 4 or 5% reduction each year to try to meet those targets. It's about 7 or 8 or 9% now to meet those targets. So we know we will fail, but I would rather us set an aspirational target and fail than to set a minimal target and not necessarily feel good about that. So there are other states that have had these conversations. Some of them have taken a modeling approach, look at population growth, BMT growth, and your model may say, you know what, our number, we're likely to increase the number of fatalities next year. And so they set their goal as an increase. So could you imagine us communicating to the public that the goal is to kill more people next year than last year? So that's something that I think in North Carolina that we want to do. Second thing relates specifically to this committee. We are reviewing and kind of developing best practices document. It's kind of basically your comment down about this committee. So we're looking at states, peer states across the nation that are active in safety and are active in the type of committee to look at how those committees are structured, how their decision-making processes flow through government and non-government groups, what their roles and functions are. And we've got a consultant on board that's doing this national study. And we think that we'll probably have some information from that to share with this group, later this year. In fact, we have a meeting scheduled in July.
Scheduled with Secretary and Jim. I think I would like to set up a July meeting with the actual committee members. Just have start the project.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if we said July or not. So we do want to set up probably
we'll decide if it's virtual or in person. We normally don't meet in July for this committee, but we would like to take some time in July, just specifically to go over the findings of that national review, with some recommendations perhaps, and that we can have some good conversation about if there's any structural changes needed with this group so that we can hopefully better tackle some of the trends that we're seeing.
Brian, you was consulting on that.
We've hired DHB to do a national review.
Anything else, Brian?
Thank you for the update, and I know everybody's involved, but thank you and your staff. Chris, Brian, Troy, Sean Troy, not Troy, Daniel, everybody that was involved in that. It's a heavy lift for you and your staff, but I appreciate that. Mark, anything more from you? Earl?
Just a couple things, we talked about, the different sections that we're looking at the safety highway plan, speeding, for us, speeding and drunk driving and lack of restraint use is a big thing for us. The speeding piece of this thing, we're seeing some extremely atrocious driving behavior out there. There's nothing for us, for these troopers on a daily basis to get speeds. I see between 146 miles an hour and 212 miles an hour on our belt line around Raleigh in our major cities, and they're dealing with that every day. So they're out there working, and there's some dangerous drivers out there and trying to catch them as fast as we can. The CV side of the house, I'm very proud of the team that we got working over there. They've done some amazing things. I know Federal Motor Carriers on here. They recently came and met with us and talked about the program here in North Carolina. And, we're doing a lot of premier stuff here. The Alki Census, distracted driving machines, these digital message boards that we've got going on. They've created we've got a brake inspections team. They can go out and reconstruct commercial vehicle enforcement crashes and get a true, holistic investigation for fatality around these commercial vehicles. And that's something that we're proud of. We have a lot of states coming down here to see how we do that. But they're doing some good work. We remind Secretary, we do need some help with these weigh stations and these inspection sites along these interstates. They're very outdated and need some upgrades. One of the things, protests, starting to deal with a lot of protest stuff. I know you saw talk about the Highway Patrol Retention Act. We're roughly 300 troopers short. That'd be like eliminating the entire southeast region for us. That's a challenge, especially in the time that we're in right now. We're doing everything we can to do things outside the box to get people in the door to be troopers. But protest stuff that's cranking up now. We talked about some House bills on here, but I had some meetings with some folks, and I anticipate seeing those laws for blocking our highways enhanced. I do support that. Anytime you go out and block a highway, to me, the moment you start blocking a major highway that has access to a regional hospital region, the airports, a lot of fake folks thinking they're blocking airport, people going on vacation, business people, and they're blocking critical items being flown all over this country, organs. There's a lot of stuff going on, sick people. And I think that needs to be greatly enhanced. And one of the things that happened in California about 3 weeks ago, they hit 5 major cities in the country. And in California, they went out there and one of the things they're doing now is taking vehicles, pulling them across the highway. Driver gets out, flees with the keys. They interlock themselves to the vehicle, across the vehicle, outside the vehicle. It took 5 hours to mitigate that on the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. If they're going to look at fixing these laws for North Carolina, I think that ramps it up to a much more serious, whether it's a felony. And I think there needs to be some kind of tort immunity against the agency to respond to that, because you have to cause any property damage to these vehicles. Typically, people's going to have to move those vehicles, or either law enforcement power, they're going to be out there helping us in a local emergency. So, and pass that information along. And just a partnership we have, any opportunity I get to talk about, IMAP, we believe in that. That is a good partnership we have with y'all. I'd like to see that thing enhanced, especially in the Charlotte region. Problems out there on the 45. I know you and I have talked about that. We appreciate partnership in the buildings. Y'all,
And, I know Mark's here from GSHP. One of the things that we've done to try to tackle these, impaired drivers is now we have a drug recognition, a DRE grant that we're trying to do is we pay troopers overtime to respond to sheer volume of those calls we have, where it'll help us, especially with the shoulders we have. I do thank you for that partnership. So, other than that, that's all I have. If you have any questions.
Anybody with questions for Carl? Thanks, sir. And I know we got a lot of things to work on. So thank you for what y'all do. I can't even imagine trying to chase down or stop somebody doing 140 miles an hour. Just thinking about the number of motorists out there.
Problem that folks is doing what they're supposed to, they don't even realize it. That those kind of vehicles are on top of shit like that. And that's catastrophic and maybe.
Then they posted on the. Right. Thank you. Do we have anybody from DMV online? I don't think there was anybody at the beginning. Highway Safety Research Center? Yolanda, did you have anything?
I just want to, thank everyone that's been involved with the safety plan, the easy route. I read all about it. So I appreciate the easy route. I appreciate the thought that you put in. Bill shared with me the process, so I appreciate all that was done. And I also appreciate you setting the aspirational goal. I enjoyed the thinking out of the box for reducing. I also want to share that we do have safety engineering that will be starting in June. He was involved with this plan, so we're excited to have him.
Thank you for coming. Sorry about the hassle trying to get into the parking lot and then. Anybody else? Just go around the table, Dietrich. Okay. Nothing. Thank you. Do you have anything else?
Just one thing, the Court of Appeals handed down an opinion on Tuesday, which said the intentional use of a motor vehicle is also a crash for purposes of Chapter 20. Though probably I guess read reports of them when they run over somebody, but it was the first time we've had to say they're not just accidents anymore, they're intentional use of motor vehicle. This one was a drug case. Guy went to buy drugs off the guy sitting in the car. Instead of paying for him, he swiped the marijuana and took off. Not smart enough to realize the guy's driving the car. And so the guy who has the marijuana stove runs over the victim, gets out, steals his marijuana, gets some marijuana back and steals money from him and flees the scene. So felony hit and run and causing serious injury. They said was a valid charge in addition to the assault charge, assault with intent to kill. So I don't know if we can stop those kind of things with highway safety. We do.
Anybody online have anything for the group? I didn't mean to skip Dale in the room. I just realized that. I'm sorry, Dale.
I was gonna mention that, this month is Bike Month.
Excuse me, next Wednesday, May 15th is the Rite of Silence. Several communities around the state do hold, and that is to remember people who were killed or seriously injured riding bicycles. So silent ride and you know, participate in the spirit of Milan movie. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? I appreciate everybody's participation. I will add before we break up, there was conversation, I think Brian shared it at the beginning about some stats that somebody had asked about at the last meeting. You've got something that you want covered or something you think would be a good idea to share this group, for that. So we do have room on the agenda for things that you think that may be interesting for us or important for us to know. Please reach out to Chris or Brian and let them know. We're happy to talk about that. We may not be able to get it on the next agenda depending on what we've got, but we're happy to do that. I made myself some notes.
suggest some ideas for future meetings while we're going through here, just some things to think about. So open that up to the group too, just for future interest or knowledge. Thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for your participation. Y'all be safe this weekend and